Okay, the stitch I'm going to show you how to do now is called a satin stitch. A satin stitch is used to cover area of your embroidery, to kind of like a fill-in, or kind of like if you were coloring in a coloring book. So on my leaves, I made a center vein just as a reference for myself. To do a satin stitch, excuse me, you're going to come up at one point. I'm using my center vein as my down reference point. And then I'm going to come back up on the same side, and then I'm going to come down right next to that stitch. So I'm going to fill in my leaf with the satin stitch after I get the knot out of my thread. There we go. And I want my stitches to be very close together because I'm filling in that area. I'm going to carry on, continuing to fill in my leaf. If you want to get some direction with your stitches instead of being straight. So now I'm going to pivot my stitch a little bit. So I'm going to come up in the next place, like the next spot where I would, but I'm going to go back down in that same hole that I used previously. And I'm going to do that a couple times, and that will start to get my angle of my satin stitch. You can see it's starting to turn just a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of keep that same method up as I go around the top of my leaf here. Still using that same point. I like to keep my stitches starting on the outside and going to the inside. It makes your stitches really consistent. If you try to come up here at the center and then go back to the outside and then come from the outside to the inside, it makes your stitches a little bit inconsistent, and they sometimes will like bubble a little bit around the outside of your stitch. That's why I try to be consistent. So if you start from the inside and work your way out, then make sure you do that all the way around for the same piece that you are doing the satin stitch for. And sometimes I get little knots, so if you can't get it out easy, it's this little loop that it makes. Just stick your needle in it and kind of give it a soft little gentle tug, and your knot will pull right out. Now I'm getting back to the point where I can straighten out my stitch again a little bit. If you like to have your leaves have a little bit of an angle, you can go ahead and just keep the satin stitch on an angle here. It really helps when you're doing leaves to give it that center vein. It gives your leaf a little bit more definition. Oops, I missed a little bit. So if that happens, then just come back, take another stitch really close, kind of fill in that little gap that I made. And if you find that if you kind of make your stitch too thick, or you have an opening in there, like I missed a little bit, I'm just going to go back. I'm just going to squeeze another stitch right in there. And that'll help fill in that area. And I'm going to work my way back to the stem. Just make my stitches smaller and smaller as I get close. And there you go. That's a satin stitch.